Hi everyone, and welcome to your Alaska Weather TV show. Starting out with the headlines today, man oh man, is a strong Arctic high pressure. It's causing blowing snow, low wind chills, bitter cold with frozen pipes and lots of problems with home heating and power outages. And then we have an outlook for the Gulf Coast and the Panhandle precipitation next weekend, and some of that could be rain. So the weather's a real mess. Eagle Airport had minus 60 Fahrenheit this morning for a low temperature, and it's currently minus 55 last I looked. So looking at our warnings and advisories, starting out with a high wind warning for Matanuska-Susitna Borough until 6 p.m. Wednesday. Could see gusts as high as 55, poor visibility and blowing snow, wind chill to minus 35 Fahrenheit, and outages for 8,500 meters the last I looked. For AKwx, we have a blizzard warning until 6 a.m. Thursday, gusts to 50, whiteout conditions, and wind chill to minus 45 Fahrenheit. Also winter weather advisory up there at Dead Horse for lesser conditions. We have a wind chill warning from Eagle to Northway until 6 a.m. Thursday, wind chill down to 60 below. We have a wind chill advisory for Delta Junction, wind chill to minus 55 Fahrenheit with blowing snow. We have a wind chill advisory for Thompson Pass to minus 55 Fahrenheit, and that's until 6 p.m. Wednesday. And then we have wind chill advisories for most of southeast Alaska for as low as minus 30 below zero until 6 a.m. Thursday. So quite a lot of weather to deal with here. Here's our satellite image for today. Arctic high pressure over northwestern Canada. The high center's somewhere near Dawson or so. And then we have some moisture streaming into the Arctic over the top of this upper level ridge that we've got going, and a couple of lows way far south in the Gulf of Alaska. And then looking at our surface map, 1057 millibars. That causes altimeters and pilots' altimeters to be set. They can't set higher than 31.00 inches of mercury. So altimeters are causing a real problem for flying in the north central eastern portion of the state as well as northwestern Canada. For tonight's weather, we've got that high still hanging around. Most of the strong winds are going to be anywhere from over by the upper Yukon River down to southeast Alaska, and I've got indicated blowing snow here, also some blowing snow in the Yukon-Kuskokwim area, and then the snow showers will be contained out in the Gulf of Alaska with those couple of low pressure systems well south of the area, and snow showers all the way out to the Pribilofs, Aleutians, and Bering Sea areas. And then for Wednesday, again, that high pressure continues. It's weakened just a little bit, but 1052 millibars, that's still a problem with altimeters. And then we have offshore winds with lots of blowing snow. All the gap winds will be blowing really hard. We have a weak system moving into northern Alaska. That's what's bringing that blizzard at AKwx. A little bit of snow with that. And then snow across the Gulf to Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians out into the Bering Sea and including the Pribilofs. And then for Thursday, we really start to see that high weaken. So it's gonna weaken, and then there'll be one center up near Udiagavik, about 1032 millibars or so. Some more down into the Alcan area with 1025, and then a weak trough out in the Gulf. Not much precipitation going on with that thing, but then we have a low pressure system that's 972 millibars south of Adak, and then there is some precipitation going on with that system. So let's look at some morning temperatures. Look at those cold temperatures in southeast Alaska. -6 for Skagway, 0 for Juneau, and then look down in the southern part, 8 degrees. And then as we come over into south central, -40 for Gulkana and -9 for Kenai. Then for Wednesday afternoon, highs up in the single digits for southeast Alaska, 16 for Yakutat, -27 for Glen Allen, and 4 for Anchorage. And then as we get into Thursday morning, again, minus teens for the Panhandle. And then -1 for Yakutat, -42 for Glen Allen, -14 for Talkeetna, -6 for Anchorage, and -14 down on the Kenai Peninsula. And then for Thursday afternoon, our highs still in single digits in south central, -26 for Glen Allen. And then as we go over to southeast, we've got, again, some high temperatures in the single digits all the way up into the 20s. For the North Slope, minus single digits, the low temperatures Wednesday morning, and then minus teens over toward the Beaufort Sea coast. Then so -52 for Fort Yukon for the low temperature Wednesday morning, -38 for Fairbanks, 2 for Nome, and then -24 for McGrath. And then as we get for high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, some single digits, +10 with Cactonic with that precipitation, but -37 for Fort Yukon, -39 for Northway, -14 for McGrath. And then low temperatures Thursday morning, again, brutally cold for a lot of the central interior, -38 for Fort Yukon, -34 for Fairbanks. And then our high temperatures Thursday afternoon, you start seeing some -20s and -30s in the interior, and then minus single digits along the North Slope. And then from the southwest, again, no let up from the cold until you get further out to the west. 16 for the Pribilofs, -7 for Bethel, 2 for King Salmon. And then for our high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, again, some minus single digits in the southwestern corner of the state, but Bristol Bay is warming up just a little bit, +16 for King Salmon. And then look at those above freezing temperatures as you go out the Alaska Peninsula, but still +31 for the Pribilofs. And then for Thursday morning, we've got temperatures in the single digits again for Bristol Bay, minus single digits for the southwestern portion, but then still some 20s and 30s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula and into the Aleutians, 26 for the Pribilofs. And then Thursday afternoon, 34 for the Pribilofs, getting above freezing, but still as you get back up into Bristol Bay and southwestern Alaska, high of -2 for Bethel. And so let's recap our warnings. We've got a Matsu, a high wind warning until 6 p.m. Alaska Standard Time on Wednesday. And that is, again, that's going to be gusts all the way up to 65 in some locations, lesser winds in some other ones, but blowing snow, wind chill to -35, and outages, like I last looked, was 8,500 or so. For a blizzard warning for Kaktovik, gust to 50, whiteout conditions, and wind chill to -45. We've got a wind chill warning from Eagle to Northway, and a lot of that is just ambient temperatures. Those are the temperatures that it doesn't take any wind to make them really, really cold. So keep that wind chill warning in mind all along the Alcan from Eagle to Northway. And then finally, we got wind chill advisories for Delta Junction. That one is -55 below and some blowing snow. For Thompson Pass, we do have, again, -50 degrees and still some blowing snow in there. Also look out for some wind loading too in the pass for the snow, and snow removal, as always, will be an issue there. And then most of southeast Alaska, I looked around and I saw minus 30 Fahrenheit as a low wind chill, and that's until 6 a.m. Thursday. So really, folks, I want you to really stay safe out there. This is a critically cold weather pattern. And then we have that precipitation moving in the outlook into southeast Alaska. Rain on snow is going to cause all kinds of problems if it warms up that much. So the forecasting crew in Juneau is taking a real careful look at that situation there for the outlook later in the weekend. And again, with precipitation is looking fairly certain, but please stay tuned for that one out there. It's going to be worked on quite a bit up until that time that they pull the trigger on any warnings for that. So thanks for tuning in. Please, again, stay safe out there.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And now for your aviation weather segment. Starting out with a flying weather Wednesday morning. First note is that altimeter settings from about the upper Yukon area all the way into northwestern Canada, altimeter settings could exceed 31.00 inches, so please pay attention to that. We do have some marginal VFR has made it onto the Beaufort Sea coast in the area of AKwx. Also, for some marginal VFR moved on to the eastern Alaska, the eastern Kenai Peninsula, as well as Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, and then on out the Aleutians and much of the Bering Sea. For Wednesday afternoon, some of that IFR is almost reaching AKwx, but the North Slope has got marginal VFR. Also, southern Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, parts of the Alaska Peninsula, and then we have some IFR that has worked its way into the central Aleutians just south of Dutch Harbor. For Thursday morning, the IFR now has moved onshore for the Beaufort Sea coastal area and on up to the Brooks Range for a good portion of the North Slope. Marginal VFR certainly up there. And then across the Gulf, we have marginal VFR to Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula. We do have some IFR that's now moved on to the southern Alaska Peninsula and the Dutch Harbor area, as well as the central Aleutians. And then for Thursday afternoon, a marginal VFR along the Chukchi Sea coast up to the Brooks Range, as well as a little bit of marginal VFR along the Alcan, southern Panhandle, over to Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula, and then well out into the Bering Sea. For our past conditions, Anaktuvik, VFR becoming marginal VFR. Adigan Pass, VFR becoming marginal VFR. Lake Kark Pass, VFR. Rainy Pass, VFR with some turbulence to the west. Windy Pass, VFR. Isabel Pass, VFR and turbulence. Mentasta Pass, VFR and turbulence. Tanita Pass, VFR with turbulence. Portage Pass, VFR. Chilkoot and White Pass, very windy with turbulence. Also VFR. And then altimeter advisory in Canada. So pods going into Canada, again, will exceed that altimeter setting. For our freezing levels Wednesday morning at the surface for just about all of the state until you get down to Unimak Island. Dutch Harbor is a little bit above freezing. And then way far south before you get to 2,000 feet. For icing on Wednesday, along the North Slope, we do have isolated moderate between 1,000 and 3,000 feet. And then we do have extensive area of isolated moderate all along the Gulf to southern Kenai Peninsula, as well as Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and then all the way out the Aleutians, as well as a good portion of the Bering Sea. For our jet stream on Wednesday, we do have a northeasterly starting to kick in over the state, roughly about 40 knots or so until you get out to St. Lawrence, where you got about 75 knots or so. But the new feature is over the Dixon entrance area and the southern panhandle, about 85 to 120 knot westerlies. For 9,000-foot winds on Wednesday with that strong high pressure over northeastern Russia, we do have easterly starting out at about 30 knots at the eastern end of Norton Sound, and then increasing to 40 to 60 knots as you cross the Bering Sea. Another branch with about 55 knots over the Pribilofs, and then about 45 knots southeasterlies as you come into the Cold Bay area. And for 3,000-foot Wednesdays, we're now indicating the high at 3,000 feet over northwestern Canada. We do have about 65 knots coming over into the Beaufort Sea near the Alcan border. Also, we have a little branch of 40 knots coming out about Norton Sound. Those are easterlies, and they go ahead and they cross the Bering Sea. Also, we have a stronger jet, about 65 knots as you cross the Cold Bay area, and bleeding off to about 55 knots as you go out across the Bering, and then also some wind in the Gulf southwest of Haida Gwaii. For a turbulence on Wednesday, we have surface to 10,000 feet for those jets that are in there, and then also along the Gulf Coast and into the Inside Passage Lynn Canal area, surface to 6,000 feet with low-level wind shear, and surface to 4,000 feet from Kodiak Island out all along the Aleutians. Fly safe out there.
So the sun, looking here from the ground, seems very constant and quiet. But actually, when we look at it from space, we can see it's quite turbulent and active. Space weather is activity on the sun and in the near-Earth space that can affect our technological infrastructure and society. The sun is constantly spewing out a stream of particles called the solar wind that goes out into the solar system. And it affects us here near Earth, where we're protected by a magnetic field. The interaction between the solar wind and the magnetic field can cause space weather. The Carrington event is the largest storm we've seen in recorded history when we're looking at space weather. But every solar cycle, which repeats about every 11 years, one estimate estimates that there's a 10% chance of getting a large storm like the Carrington event that could impact us here on Earth. But we see solar storms almost all the time. And these storms have an effect on our technological infrastructure. Solar storms can cause activity in Earth's atmosphere and magnetosphere that can damage electrical power grids that power our communities, interrupt radio and satellite communications, and can cause our GPS navigation to fail. NOAA is working with its international partners to ensure that we have different vantage points where we can observe space weather. Our space weather observing infrastructure from space includes the NOAA Discover satellite and the NASA ACE satellite that are stationed upstream of Earth to give us a first buoy measurement of the solar wind. It also includes the ESA-NASA SOHO satellite and the NASA Stereo satellite that image the sun and also make coronagraph measurements of the outer atmosphere of the sun, the corona, that can tell us when large explosions happen off the sun. We also observe the sun and the Earth's magnetic field from the geostationary location with NOAA's GOES. So the way we use the space weather information from satellites and from the ground is to be able to make forecasts and predictions, just like we do with hurricanes and terrestrial weather. We observe the sun and look for activity and see how it develops, and see if it's going to culminate into a large explosion that can affect us here on Earth. NOAA is working with its international partners to expand our observing capability. We're committed to observing along the Sun-Earth line. So we're going to do the imaging of the sun and the upstream buoy measurements of the solar wind along the Sun-Earth axis. The more we understand about the sun, the more we can prepare for it and become, just like we are a weather-ready nation, become a space weather-ready nation. And as we look forward to humans exploring out into the solar system and advancing our space commerce activities, space weather becomes more and more important.
Here at the Space Weather Prediction Center, we monitor space activity as it's occurring back at the sun, and then we issue out a forecast as well as alerts, watches, and warnings as activity is occurring. A typical space weather event would start with a solar flare back at the sun. That solar flare is short-lived and produces fairly short-lived impacts as well, basically impacting communications on the daylit side of the Earth. However, some solar flares are also associated with a coronal mass ejection or an eruption of plasma that's blasted off the sun and out into space. As forecasters, it's our job to determine if that cloud of plasma is moving towards Earth, and if it comes towards Earth, what the potential impacts may be. Those impacts can range from a fairly low-level storm that may produce the aurora a little bit farther south than usual, or can range up into fairly significant magnetic disturbances that don't happen very often, but when they do, they can impact technologies and infrastructure here on Earth. We provide information to lots of different user groups, from airlines to the electric power grid, to emergency managers, aviation, satellite community, lots of different customers.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for your marine forecast. Starting out with today's sea ice edge, quite an advancement toward the southwest is still going on. Could be moving as much as 65 to 80 miles over the next few days, and it may even touch St. Matthew Island. Also, I want to mention heavy freezing spray all across the Bering Sea. Also, a lot of the marine forecasts for the Western Gulf have heavy freezing spray. And then for the inside passage in southeast Alaska. So watch out for that heavy freezing spray. That's rapid ice accumulation. So for Wednesday's marine forecast for southeast Alaska, on the inside waters, northerlies generally, gusts of 50 in Lynn Canal, otherwise 20 to 35 knots and seas up to 7 feet. Offshore flow on the outside waters, winds ranging from 20 to 30 knots and seas up to 10 feet in that offshore flow. And then for Thursday, again, northerlies on the inside, ranging from 15 in the south to 35 gale force in the north with gusts of 50 in Lynn Canal. And then we have a longshore flow from 20 to 25 knots on the outside waters and seas up to 12 feet. For the south central waters, generally easterlies, 15 knots in Prince William Sound, 20 to 25 knots on the outside, including some gusts of 45 knots out of the Copper River Delta, and then up to 40 knots in Lower Cook Inlet, seas 11 feet there. For Thursday's marine forecast, now we've still got some offshore flow, 20 to 25 knots on the outside water, seas up to 9 feet. And then in Cook Inlet, 10 to 20 knots and seas up to 5 feet. For the peninsula and Kodiak Island, generally easterlies, 35 to 45 knots on the Gulf side, seas up to 19 feet. And then for the Bering Sea side, after you get off the ice, northeast 40 and seas 14 feet. And then for Thursday, again, northeasterlies general direction, winds 25 to 30 knots on the Gulf side and seas up to 12 feet. And on the Bering Sea, Easterly winds 30 knots and seas 9 feet after you get off the ice. And then for the Aleutian chain, we've got wind ranging from 35 to 45 knot, whole gale, generally easterly direction. On the Bering Sea side, seas up to 23 feet where you have a decent fetch. And then on the Pacific side, seas up to 22 feet. And then on Thursday, again, generally easterly flow, 25 to 35 knots on the Bering Sea side, 30 to 40 knots on the Pacific side, seas up to 15 feet there, and on the Bering Sea side, 21 as you get feet as you get out into the western Aleutians. Offshore flow for the west coast on Wednesday, wind ranging 25 all the way up to 40 knots for the Pribilofs, seas up to 16 feet in the Pribilofs. And then again, offshore flow again on Thursday, wind ranging 15 all the way up to 40 once you get down to St. Paul and St. George, seas 18 feet there. For the Arctic coast, on the north slope, we've got generally westerlies up to 35 knots over the ice. And then as you get down off of Point Hope or so, and then down to the Bering Strait, 15 to 25 knots. And then for Thursday, again, westerlies, 15 to 30 knots along the Beaufort Sea, and then 10 to 25 knots on the western side. So recapping tonight's weather, Arctic high pressure, 1057 millibars. That's really, really strong for a lot of outflow winds, blowing snow. And then we have showers over the Gulf, a couple of weak lows down south of the Aleutians, 967, and then easterly flow over the Bering Sea. Then we get over on Wednesday, again, that high pressure weakens just a little bit, 1052 millibars for a lot of offshore slow and blowing snow. And then finally on Thursday, those highs really weaken. 1032 up by Utiagavik and 1025 along the Alcan, and then a couple of lows in the Bering Sea. Stay safe out there and keep a weather eye out. Thanks for tuning in.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.